Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join with the Prime Minister in wishing the people of Southend well, and I hope it does become a city. Is that OK? Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister's offer for talks following the meetings that I've held with members across this House and look forward to meeting her later today, and I welcome her willingness to compromise to resolve the Brexit deadlock. Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister began her premiership, she promised to resolve the burning injustices facing this country. So can she explain why, by the government's own official figures, poverty has risen for all ages under her administration?
Minister.
No one in government wants to see poverty rising, and we take this very seriously indeed. But as I've said previously to the right honourable gentleman, the only sustainable way to tackle poverty is with a strong economy and a welfare system that helps people into work. And that's why it's important that we have the lowest unemployment since the 1970s, that we have the number of homes where no one works is at a record low. But we also need to make sure that work pays. And if I just give the right honourable gentleman some figures, in 2010, under Labour government, someone working full-time on the national minimum wage would have taken home £9,200 after tax and national insurance. Now, thanks to our tax cuts and the biggest increase in the national living wage, they will take home over £13,700. That's £4,500 more under a Conservative government.
Mr. Speaker, official figures show that since 2010, child poverty has increased by 500,000, working age poverty by 200,000 and pensioner poverty by 400,000. And while she's right to mention the national minimum wage, something her party strongly opposed the introduction of, I think we should just be aware of what the national minimum wage actually means. It's £8.21. For over 25s, it's £8.21. For 21 to 24-year-olds, it's only £7.70. And for apprentices, it's just £3.90 an hour. These are poverty wages. Mr. Speaker, there are now 8 million people in this country in work and in poverty. Many on middle incomes are struggling to make ends meet. Universal credit is failing. Will the Prime Minister, at the least today, halt the rollout of universal credit and agree to a thorough review of it?
Prime Minister.
As the right honourable gentleman knows, as we've been rolling out universal credit, we have been making changes to it. We changed one of the early measures that we took when I became Prime Minister was to change the taper rate. We have since abolished the 7-day waiting. We have ensured that we've taken action to make it easier for those who are transferring onto universal credit in relation to their housing benefit. But crucially, can I say to the right honourable gentleman, there is only one way to ensure that we see a sustainably deal with the issue of poverty. That is to ensure... Well, no. Oh, I'll come on to that, as the honourable gentleman has shouted that. That is to ensure that we have a strong economy that delivers jobs and better jobs for people, and that they can keep more of the money that they earn. And what do we know would happen? Well, from behind him, from a sedentary position, one of his honourable friends says the answer is a Labour government. A Labour government that would spend £1,000 billion more than this has been proposed. A Labour government that would put up taxes. A Labour government. A Labour Party that has opposed tax cut after tax cut. That's how you help working people. Tax cuts, keep people in work, better jobs, high employment. That's under the Conservatives.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Speaker, for a government that rolled out austerity and has caused such poverty across the country, she really ought to think for a moment about what she's just said. The last Labour government halved child poverty. The last Labour government brought in children's centres, brought in Sure Start. The last Labour government reduced poverty across the whole country. She seems to be ignoring the true impact of universal credit. The Trussell Trust says that in areas where universal credit has been rolled out, food bank use has increased by over 50%. This week we also learned that another 400,000 pensioners are in poverty compared to 2010. So why is the Prime Minister pressing ahead with cuts to pension credit for couples where one is of pension age and the other is not?
Prime Minister.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, it is under a Conservative government that we've seen the triple lock on pensions that has provided increases, good increases for pensioners year after year. It is under this Conservative government that we have seen the introduction of the new pension arrangements for individuals who are pensioners. And let's just remember what we saw under a Labour government. It's not under a Conservative government that we saw a 75p rise in pensions. It was under Labour.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Last Labour government lifted 2 million pensioners out of poverty. This government's put 400,000 more into poverty. And Age UK, who I think know a thing or two about this, says that this proposal by the government is a substantial stealth cut. This year, 15,000 pensioner households could be up to 7,000 per year worse off as a result of this stealth cut. And I'm pleased the Prime Minister mentioned the triple lock, because at the last general election, the government alarmed older people by pledging to scrap the triple lock and the means-tested winter fuel allowance. Can the Prime Minister give an unequivocal commitment this is no longer government policy and it won't be in the next Tory manifesto?
Prime Minister.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, we have given our commitments to pensioners. We are clear. We are keeping those commitments to pensioners. What we've seen under Conservatives in government is the basic state pension rise by over £1,450 a year. That is in direct contrast to what a Labour government did for our pensioners. We want people to be able to live in dignity in their old age, and that's what this Conservative government is delivering.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the whole generation of waspy women will be pretty alarmed at the lack of action by this government and the lack of justice for them. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, over 1 million over 75s currently receive a free TV licence, a scheme established by the last Labour government. This government transferred the scheme to the BBC without guaranteeing its funding. Will the government take responsibility and guarantee free TV licences for the over 75s?
We've been clear what we expect the BBC to do, and frankly, I think the BBC is in a position to be able to do that with the income that they receive.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Speaker, the last Labour government guaranteed free TV licences for the over 75s. This government appears to be outsourcing that policy to the BBC. I think it should be an item of public policy, not sent to somebody else to administer on behalf of the government. Mr. Speaker, the last Labour government lifted 2 million pensioners out of poverty. 2 million children were lifted out of absolute poverty, and homelessness was cut in half. Contrast that with this government, which has put 500,000 more children into poverty, 400,000 more pensioners into poverty, and doubled homelessness. This, by this government, is a political choice. There is nothing inevitable about rising poverty, homelessness and soaring food bank use in the 5th richest country on earth. So yes, let's work to try and resolve the Brexit deadlock. But, Mr. Speaker, unless this government tackles insecure work, low pay, rising pensioner poverty, her government will be marked down for what it is, a failure in the eyes of the people of this country.
Prime Minister.
First of all, say to the right honourable gentleman, he quoted the last Labour government. I didn't realise he was such a fan of the last Labour government. He seemed to spend his entire time voting against it when it had a Labour government. But let's just talk about what is happening under this government. Record rate of employment, wages growing at their fastest for a decade, debt falling, a long-term plan for the NHS, the biggest cash boost in the NHS's history, skills-based immigration system, more money for police, for local councils, for schools, the biggest upgrade in workers' rights for over 20 years, freeing councils to build more homes, world-class public services, better...
Order! Mr. Russell-Moyle, you are behaving in a truly delinquent fashion. Calm yourself, young man. I had to have words with you yesterday. You're a bit over-eager. It's not the sort of thing I would ever have done as a backbencher. The Prime Minister.
World-class public services, Better jobs, more homes, a stronger economy, Conservatives delivering on the things that matter.
Dame Cheryl Gillan.